So systems operate in a really strange way. And if you understand this strange way, you understand systems. Now, if you don't understand what I'm going to tell you in this video, then you're not going to understand fully how systems actually work. And if you don't understand how systems work, you don't really understand how business works. And if you don't understand how business works, you're probably not going to make a huge amount of money. So in this video, I'm going to attempt to help you understand one of the core components that encapsulates the nature of system thinking. I'm going to explain it from an appointment booking and sales perspective, more specifically an appointment booking perspective, because that's probably one of the main problems you're trying to solve. But this can also apply to service delivery, it can apply to onboarding, it can apply to sales. We're going to sort of take a framework and we're going to look at it through the lens of appointment booking systems. If you understand this, it's going to really help you build a system for appointment booking in a way better way, essentially. My name's Charlie. I've built and scaled 2 companies through systems, fortunately enough, so I have some idea of what I'm talking about. I scaled a marketing agency to 7 figures, and I have also scaled a coaching business to multi-7 figures. I'm currently making videos here to help people make client acquisition easy, and also to document my understanding and lessons of an 8-figure journey and also beyond, which is obviously quite exciting. So I want to share this with you. I do get quite excited, which is probably quite sad. I nerd out on systems. I've read every book I can find on systems thinking, and I'm excited to take you on the journey with me towards systems thinking. One heads up, like if you can't watch a 10 to 20 minute video on systems thinking, how are you going to build and grow a business? So like people struggle with their attention spans, but I'm telling you, if you do not understand the premise and the core idea of this video, you're never going to build a successful system. Now, you can obviously try and understand this from other sources on the internet. There's going to be other people that can tell you how to do this, but here we are now. So let's get into it, and I'll see you in my computer. All right then, so let's have a look. Oh, I scrolled into the wrong place. So welcome to my laptop. Today we are going to be talking about system compartmentalization, which is a massive mouthful, and I decided to type it out instead of squiggling it out in Miro because my artistic prowess doesn't extend that far. I also have a lovely picture of Megamind here saying no systems, because if you don't have any systems, this might make you laugh. He also has my hairline as well, so I feel like it's quite relevant. But let's get into system compartmentalization. I'm going to leave this here to motivate you to watch to the end. So I hope it works. It's a very strange retention strategy. But let's talk about system compartmentalization, which I've now said 3 times and starts to feel, when a word starts to feel a bit weird. But this is really important to understand. So we're going to look at this from an appointment booking perspective. More specifically, let's take a specific system of cold calling, right? So you can apply this idea, this premise, compartmentalization, to basically any system you have. It works on the premise. I'll give you this sort of 5-second explanation, 10-second explanation, and then I'm actually going to detail it out and explain what it means. When you think about a system, right, you have to think about parts as a whole. The system works like this, right? Where you've got this big, long, rectangle here. And what happens is value flows through the system. So if we take cold calling, for example, we have leads, whatever the hell that says actually, it looks like it's something else. But let's say this says leads. Right, and then over here you have appointments. And if the system is functioning, leads flow through the system and appointments are generated. But what we need to understand is that this system becomes compartmentalized at a part level. And what that means is we can actually split this system into a series of parts like this. The problem with this is that if you're not getting appointments through a cold calling system, you need to diagnose what the problem is, right? And a lot of the time people look at it as a whole, they don't look at it as parts. And a part is much easier to fix than a whole. So let's say, for example, you almost want to treat an appointment booking system the same way you treat your car. If you wake up one morning and your car does not start, it's not necessarily a case of declaring that your entire car is broken. There's probably one very specific part of the car that isn't running properly. All the other parts in the car might run fine, but if one thing, conks out, then the whole car won't run. And so you take it to a garage, the garage then lifts the hood, they look at what's going on, they find out that the fan belt's not working, or that, you didn't change the oil or whatever. Then they fix that, and then, they put the bonnet down and the car's ready to go again. A system in appointment booking is very similar to that metaphor, whereby if you've got leads going into an appointment booking system and appointments are not flowing out, it might be the case that the entire system is fucked, or it might be the case that just 1 or 2 parts of the system are fucked. And this is an important lesson in critical thinking and rationality here. And I see this all the time where business owners, they try to create an appointment booking system or lack thereof, because when people try it usually doesn't work. And then they put some inputs through it, and then what happens is they don't get any appointments. And then they just declare that the entire thing doesn't work. But if they were smart about it and had critical thinking abilities, which is unfortunate because it's not taught in school, you have to learn it yourself, they would know that it's not how it works. So I'm going to break this down, and I'm really going to help you understand this. And the idea of compartmentalization is a wonderful sort of mental model and tool to have. So let's take cold calling as a system, right? So what we need to sort of understand here is that there's more to cold calling than finding a number, calling, pitching, and booking the appointment, right? There are a series of actions or steps or compartments, right, parts that need to take place in order for an appointment to be booked through cold calling. So let's list them out, and let's actually first principle this so we know what parts of the system we're dealing with. So obviously the first part of the system is finding the leads to call, right? That's fairly straightforward. The second part of the system is actually dialing the leads properly. And people don't consider this, but like, if you're not dialing leads properly, it might sound so obvious, but if you're not like double dialing, or if you're using a dodgy dialer, or if you're not using a local number, then people aren't going to answer. So this is the thing, right? So this is actually getting people to answer you, right? Essentially, answer the phone. And then we've obviously got the gatekeeper, right? And then after that, we've obviously got like, we need permission to pitch, right? And then after that, we've got the actual pitch itself. And then after that, we've got sort of, we'll call it the close/booking, right? The actual close/booking. And then all the way after that, we've got the show up, right? So what we can actually, I don't know why Myro's just decided to make this annoying change, but what we can observe here is that cold calling as an appointment booking system is actually broken down into 7 parts, right? So in order for us to go all the way from lead to appointment that shows up, right, we need to find the leads, we need to dial them properly from a local number and double dial and leave everything we need. Then we also need to bypass gatekeepers. Then we need to get permission from the decision maker to pitch. Then we need to pitch the decision maker. Then we need to close them on the booking, and then they need to actually show up. So there are 7 points that we need to get right. So people think like, this is why people get it wrong. When they say like, all I need to know is the pitch. It's like, yes, sure, that might be like 40% of the battle, but realistically, you've actually got 7 other variables that you need to account for and get right. 7 parts that need to work in tandem. And so if you think about this like a car, the leads could be the fan belt, the dialing could be the oil. Actually, that's about as far as my car knowledge goes, so we will not exhaust that metaphor any further, but you get the point. So let's take another example. Let's say you're using Loom cold emails, right, to book appointments. So let's say that you're using Looms, right? So let's just pull this up here. So first of all, you've got to get the leads again. Then you've actually got to like make the Loom, right, and make sure that it's, you know, recorded properly. Then you've got to send it, right? Then you've got to follow up on it cold. And then you've got to deal with replies, people that reply positively. Then you've also got to deal with another round of follow-up, warm. Then you've got to deal with booking people. And then once again, you have to deal with getting people to actually show up. What we can see is that like, it's not even this as well. You've got 3.5, which is getting people to view the Loom, right? So basically my point here, and I'm going to explain this in some more detail. A system is a collection of parts. It's not it's not just one vacuum sort of siloed like thing. It's not like, okay, if you want to get good at cold calling, you just need the right cold calling script. So let me explain the key to this whole thing. So what you need to understand, basically, metrics, right? You need to know data, because what happens, right? And I'm going to sort of break this down for you here. Let's take the cold calling example, right? So we have a couple of conversion rates, right? So we have the first part of the process is obviously effectively getting the leads, but really like the system actually commences when we dial, right? So these are dials, right? So how many dials we make. So this would be the first metric we track. How many phone numbers do we actually ring, right? The second part of the system is going to be answers, right? How many people actually answer the phone, right? Then the third part of the system, the third thing we need to track is decision makers that we've actually pitched, right? So like, how many decision makers like do we pitch? So once we get an answer, like what's the likelihood we actually get a decision maker and we get to pitch them? And then the fourth metric is obviously going to be like a conversation, which is like, you know, you've pitched the decision maker and they're like, all right, well, tell me some stuff about it. The fifth metric is going to be bookings, right? And then you can obviously track shows as well because it's still part of the system. So you have this ability to track data and to basically understand where you're going wrong with your systems and your processes. Most people fall short at the first metric. They don't make enough dials. People tell me like, oh, Charlie, I'm doing like 20 cold calls a day. I'm like, that is a joke. You need to do like 200 a day. So you need to make sure you're putting enough, like if you're not putting enough volume, because this operates like a funnel, right? It operates like an inverted, pyramid. It's like if you're not putting enough input through the top of the funnel, and this is fairly simple, to understand as a marketer, but if you're not putting enough dials through at the top, then you're not going to have enough answers, you're not going to have enough decision makers, you're not going to have enough conversations, bookings, and then shows, and you basically won't have anything. So this is why like volume is the key at the beginning, because volume gives you enough insight of data to then start to make decisions. So what you need to be doing with all of your appointment booking systems is tracking your metrics every single step of the way. So like every time you make a dial, like when I used to do cold calling, I would make a tally, right? Just like knowing how many people I've called, because what you want to start to establish is a few conversion rates. So first of all, here we've got the dial to answer rate, right? So we'll call this the DAR, the dial to answer rate. And then once we've got that, we've actually got the answer to decision maker rate. So we can call this like the ADR. Answer decision maker rate, right? And then after that, we've obviously got the decision maker to conversation rate. And then after that, we've got the conversation to booking rate. And then we've actually got the show up rate. So what we can actually start to do is we can understand the system as a series of conversion rates, right? Just how we do it with Facebook ads. Let me show you an example of this. So I managed to find an example from a different system. This is for a service delivery thing. If you guys want me to make another video on this for service delivery, you can let me know. But this is another example, right? So this is a spreadsheet tracker for service delivery from a lead generation perspective. So what we can see here, and it's quite a complicated one, but it should make sense to you in terms of how I just explain this. So like with service delivery, if you're doing lead generation, right? It's the same premise as appointment booking. It's like, whether this is e-com or lead generation, it's like, if you're doing lead generation, the first metric you can track is like your CPM, like what's your cost per, 1,000 people to view, whatever. Then you've obviously got your cost per click, but realistically, it makes more sense to track it like this, right? So you've got your overall, your CPM, right? But then you've got your click-through rate. And then once you've got your click-through rate, you've got your funnel conversion rate, right? Or your form conversion rate, depending on where people are going. And then you've obviously got the booking rate and all of this good stuff. So what this actually looks like from like a metrics perspective is this. So when I used to do service delivery for clients, every client would have a spreadsheet like this, where I would fill in the blue and they would fill in the pink, so we can track the overall effectiveness of the system. So what this means is like, I'm calculating the cost per every single metric and the conversion rate at every single step of the way. So what we can see here is the conversion rates that we'd be tracking in this system are the click-through rate on the impressions we get, the funnel conversion rate on like the people who actually come to the funnel, the appointment booking rate from the people who have come, and the show-up rate on those people all the way to the sales conversion rate. So what looks like just, I run Facebook ads for gyms, is actually like I'm building 5 compartments that I can then extract data from to track the effectiveness of each compartment. And then what happens here, just like a car, so if we go back to this cold calling thing, right? It's like, let's say, for example, that you're making, loads of dials, you're getting loads of answers, right? And let's say that, like your conversation, your decision maker to conversation rate is actually really good, or it would be really good with the variables you've got. Then let's say the conversation to booking rate would be great because you've got a great script, and the show would be great. The thing about this is like, if you're getting loads of answers and all of these other things would be perfect, but you're not pitching enough decision makers here, then this becomes the bottleneck. And what starts to happen is your ADR, right, your answer to decision maker rate, right? Like if this is out of whack, then the entire system falls apart. So you have to look at a system, that saying like, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. The exact same thing applies with systems and how they work. So you can have you can make 1,000 dials a day, right? In theory, you can have the best conversation ability, the best booking ability, the best show ability. But if you're bottlenecked at this point of answers to decision makers, if you're just not getting through to decision makers, the entire system crumbles. So all you'd have to do is fix this one metric and this one problem. And so what I want you to do here is shift your paradigm, right? And we're going to just bring Megamind back up here just so you get another look at him. But what we want to do here is observe that systems exist compartmentalized. And what that means is that they are like a big system, you know, we can see it on a macro level, like a big system where we have leads go in and appointments come out, right? Like something like that. Actually, in reality, is a series of subsystems and parts that all must be operating properly for the result to happen. So what looks like one big thing is actually 5 little things that all must be working in tandem, right? In order for appointments to come from leads, for that to be the output. And so when you're building systems, you need to basically have spreadsheets like this to track every single output of metric. The true output of a system is actually the data, if that makes sense. This is all you're trying to do is just accumulate enough data so you can start making decisions. And really, like 90% of problem solving with your systems will come from defining the problems in the first place. Just, you have to start thinking like this. And every single, like all of these squares here, they all denote like a specific part, like part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and part 5. And so like, let's say for example, like you could, part 5 might be fine, part 3 might be fine, part 2 might be fine, and part 1 might be fine. But if part 4 isn't working for whatever reason, then the entire system will collapse, because at this point you will achieve what is called a bottleneck, which is, you know, where you have a flow through a system, and then unfortunately like there's a bottleneck at a point like this. And that's how systems work. So my point here is that if you've got an appointment booking system that isn't working, the first thing you need to establish is like, you know, these are the action items for you right now. So if you've got an appointment booking system, or, you know, lack thereof, the first thing you need to establish is like, what are the parts of this system? Like how can I compartmentalize this visually so I can understand the key points at which value flows through this system and the point at which drop off can happen? So you establish the part, right? Then you need to establish the data that basically helps you understand these parts. Because if you're not generating appointments from a system, it's not that the entire system's broken, it's usually going to be the fact that 1 or 2 parts is. Now, you might find that every single part is fucked. But the point here is like, if you want to build a system, it takes time, it takes data, right? And so like the first thing you need to establish is, how do we go from part 1 to part 2, right? So when people look at cold calling and building a cold calling system, they get so tied up in getting appointments that they forget to actually figure out how to get enough people to answer. So you have to solve problems. It's kind of like climbing a ladder, essentially. You know, if you've got like a ladder like this, you know, you have to climb the first rung before you can climb the 5th. And when people are building appointment booking systems, they're trying to book appointments before they've even figured out how to dial properly. So you need to define the parts, and you need to then build the system from the ground up like a pyramid, because this is how it's going to work. You have to build the foundations properly and understand how to climb from this rung to this rung, and then you find out how to climb from this rung to this rung, and you reverse engineer it into its parts, and then you apply it. So once you've established the parts, you then need to start running the system, even if it's faulty, so you can establish the data. Because then once you've got the data, you can establish the conversion rates, and then you can find out where you're going to be bottlenecked. And then once you've got the data, you can then define the problem, right? So what's the problem? And then once you've got the problem, you can ask yourself, well, what is the solution? And that is how it's done. It's not like you have to start thinking about systems in this way of compartmentalization. An appointment booking system is nothing but a collection of conversion rates that, if properly tracked, can be diagnosed and solved, and then the entire system can flourish and win. And if you can learn to think like this, you won't have to be, you know, haunted by, I didn't know he's got green eyes actually, that's terrifying, but you won't be haunted by Megamind anymore. All right, so that is my idea of system compartmentalization. It's made me a lot of money, and it's how I think. It's like whenever a client comes to me with a systems problem, the first thing I say is like, where's the data? Because it's like, any client of Imperium will have heard that question time and time again, like, what are the metrics? Like, where's the data? Have you got the data? You know, it's as simple as this. The problem people have is like, because they tie themselves to their business growth and their self-worth is associated with their business growth, as is their ego, any problem that basically stops them from growing their business makes them feel like they're not growing themselves. And then all of that emotion is thrown into the system. Like if you really want to build a system, you have to take all the emotion out of it. And that's something that I've learned, having built appointment booking systems. I think this year for Imperium, I think we've booked like 3,500 appointments or something like that. Maybe not that many, like 3,000 I think is probably more accurate. By the way, like if you don't want to figure this all out on your own and you want some help, we do have a program that supports that. It's not a 997 course. You have to apply. You can click the first link in the description. You don't have to. I really don't want you to feel like I'm just here to sell you something. I truly just want to help people at this point in my life. Like it's enough of a struggle to try and build an agency or a coaching business on your own. Like I just want to help. So I hope this is helpful. But if you do want to see how we help people, beyond this stuff, you can just click the first link. Subscribe and like it and comment it if you enjoyed it. Comment it? That doesn't make any sense. Anyways, hope you guys have a wonderful day. No doubt. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.